WildCast is live on the air with the latest on hunting, fishing, boating, and all things outdoors. Make welcome your host, drummer and outdoor expert novice, Jason Harmon.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee WildCast. I'm Jason Harmon. I'm your host, and today we are on location once again at Tellico Hatchery in the Cherokee National Forest. It's awesome to be here. It's warming up a little bit. We shot a show earlier today, and we've got another one here for you today with Mr. Brandon Ware. He's the manager here on the South Cherokee and also Tellico Lake, WMA. So, Brandon, glad you're here with us today.
Thank you.
And Miss Mimi Barnes is here once again helping me co-host. And
happy to be here. Always fun.
Yeah, glad to have you. And if you hear water in the background, that's the runways, the raceways here at the hatchery. And it's fun to be on location for these shows. I enjoy it.
It is. They're growing fish behind us. That's cool.
Yeah. So we thought while we're here, we'll get a couple shows under our belt. And Mimi is always great about finding us some guests. And Brandon is here today.
Brandon is very, very sweet to be here with us today on short notice, and we're excited to hear a little bit more about what you do. You do a tremendous amount of work. Maybe we'll start out just by hearing about Brandon because
sure.
he has a really interesting past.
Yeah, tell us, Brandon, about yourself and how you got here with the agency and what brought you to Tennessee or Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency.
Well, I grew up in Tellico Plains, which is
okay.
So
you're a
just
bear
down the road.
A bear at heart.
Tellico bear, yeah, yeah. So I grew up in Tellico, and of course grew up hunting and fishing, spending time outdoors in the Cherokee National Forest. Went to college at the University of Tennessee, got my bachelor's and master's there, and my graduate work involved a black bear reintroduction project in South Arkansas. So I had worked with bears on a couple of projects as a technician, first getting started in wildlife, and was fortunate enough to land a graduate position doing some field work with bears. So we reintroduced bears to southern Arkansas. They are actually just now beginning to look at possibly hunting the bears where we reintroduced those bears to that portion of the state. So that went well. From there, I went to work for the agency in the non-game program, bounced around a little bit, and ended up in Hamilton County as a wildlife officer, and then Polk County most recently. Worked in Polk County for several years, and there got to deal with bears a lot because obviously half of the county is Cherokee National Forest. We have a large bear population there. We deal a lot with nuisance bears and bear hunting seasons and things like that. So I got to use some of that past experience to work with bears in Polk County as a wildlife officer. And help out with the black bear management there. That led to me transitioning to the wildlife manager at Tellico Lake and South Cherokee Wildlife Management Areas, which is where I'm at now. And I've been here about 2 years now.
Wow, time goes fast. My experience with Brandon here in the region has been there's a bear issue. Who do you call? And people know the experts in their regions, right. and Brandon answers a lot of those questions.
Yep, and we're going to talk a lot about bears today, but you mentioned Tellico Lake, WMA, and that you and your crew manage that area. I guess first tell us about your crew, and then tell us about what y'all do on these different on Tellico WMA, and then
it's quite
South
a bit
Cherokee.
Of land.
Yeah,
right. So, like I said, we manage the Tellico Lake Wildlife Management Area and South Cherokee Wildlife Management Area. Tellico Lake is over 7,000 acres of lands. Owned by the Tennessee State Parks, Tennessee Valley Authority, and the Tellico Reservoir Development Agency. We don't actually own the land, but we manage that acreage as a wildlife management area for public access, hunting, field trials, different things like that. There's also a portion of it that is a waterfowl refuge, Chota Waterfowl Refuge. It's on a peninsula of Tellico Lake. And then South Cherokee Wildlife Management Area is over 300,000 acres of national forest in Monroe and Polk County. So we're in the southeast corner of the state. Of course, the Forest Service owns the national forest, manages the recreation resources, timber resources, fire management, things like that. And we work cooperatively with them through an agreement to manage the wildlife resources on the area. And so we manage it as a wildlife management area. It's one of the larger ones in the state. And in managing that, I have myself and 2 technicians that manage
All of
over
that.
300,000 acres.
It's amazing, isn't it?
So we have our hands full throughout the year. There's not really a downtime.
How'd you find time to be with us today?
Well, I was kind of roped into it.
He's a good sport. So tell us a little bit about your technicians.
Freddie Kelly and Steve Massengale are my 2 technicians. They're both from the Tellico area also. So we've got a local crew that's familiar with the area, that has a lot of ties in this area, and I think makes them really passionate about working for the wildlife resources here at home, basically.
Yeah.
They're both great guys. Both of them have various backgrounds in construction, logging, carpentry, mechanics, different things. They can weld. I mean, they can do, pretty much anything. And, of course, farming. And they use all of that on the job. They're just really great guys and great help on the area. Pretty much, I go to them a lot of times and to see, hey, what needs to be done right now? What are you guys working on? And I've learned as much from them as I've helped, lead them, I'm sure.
I think that's the same across the state. On most of our WMAs, most of our guys have so many abilities. They can do anything, like you said, from carpentry to mechanic. Be a mechanic, can weld, can build stuff, make a tool if they need it, and it's amazing what our guys can do.
Yeah, they've got a lot of energy too.
They do. They do.
They really do, and it's always a pleasure. I will give them a shout out for their cooking as well, because they are great cooks.
Both great cooks. We actually try to help with a lot of youth events, veteran events, and things like that on Tellico Lake in South Cherokee. And Freddie and Steve usually always cook at those, and it's always a big hit.
Always a big hit.
Yeah. Well, tell us about, real quick, Freddie. He recently was named Technician of the Year, right?
He was the TWRA Wildlife Technician of the Year for this year. Like I said, Freddie does a little bit of everything. And last year, one thing that was noted in his recognition in that award, he was working the bear check station during one of the hunts, and it just happened to be the day that one of the Navy training jets went down here in the Cherokee National Forest. Freddie was one of the first ones on the scene there that day and stayed with him throughout that ordeal during the recovery process. Helped with the fire containment, mapping area, routes to get in there to the wreck site and different things like that. And so that's just one example of the many things that they do and how they go above and beyond all the time, because he left what he was doing and rushed up here knowing, he was probably the closest one around.
Yeah,
Wow.
probably knew the area better than those other
most
people that were
anyone
coming in.
around.
That's awesome.
So back to that management that they both help support, and all 3 of you work so hard to do. Tell us a little bit about those 2 wildlife management areas. You talked about Tellico Lake WMA and even containing Chota Refuge. What's Tellico known for, and then South Cherokee? What would you say it's known for?
Okay, well, Tellico Lake, of course, obviously is smaller, and most of the property is adjacent to that Tellico Reservoir. It's mostly in a series of peninsulas or islands there around the lake, and because of that, it's going to be smaller tracts. There's not a lot of very large tracts of timber, and we manage large portions of it for primarily small game hunting. We have some open fields mixed with hardwoods, and we manage that for rabbit, quail, squirrel, youth hunts, and things like that. One portion of it, the McGee-Carson tract, is managed primarily for youth hunting. There's no adult hunting allowed on that area, but we have quota deer and turkey hunts for youth, and then small game hunting throughout the season. And then we also manage it for field trials, so that people can train or have field trials for bird dogs and rabbit dogs and things like that. So,
And you have a youth quail?
and we have a youth quail hunt and a youth quail event, Jake's Day, different youth events like that. But those open areas on that portion of the WMA, we manage those fields as most of them are native warm season grass fields, or a mixture of grasses and woody vegetation, early successional habitat, for, which is important for small game. And we do a lot of disking, burning, planting, food plot strips, things like that.
Wow.
So we'll have a rotation on those different individual fields, so that they're burned, every couple of years to maintain that early successional habitat that's important for quail and rabbits and other species.
Before the show, we were talking, but turkey and deer are also statewide, right? The same as statewide seasons on that WMA. Is that correct?
No, there are portions of it where the deer season, where all the hunting season is the same as statewide.
Okay. Our
Wares Bend unit and Bacon Bend unit, which are two peninsulas on the lake, they're open with the statewide seasons.
Gotcha.
But McGee-Carson and the Tellico West Tract, they're managed primarily just through quota hunts. So on one portion, the Tellico West Tract, which is an industrial area, it's managed in partnership with TRDA through 4 archery quota deer hunts in the fall.
Wow.
So September through December, we have 4 2-day hunts for adults, and those are used as population management tools around that industrial park. The McGee-Carson Tract, like I said, is just youth hunting, either small game hunts, which are open weekends during November, December, January, or those limited quota deer and turkey hunts. And then our Chota Waterfowl Refuge, it is open the same as statewide season until the refuge closure on November 15th each year. And then it's closed obviously for those wintering waterfowl to have resting and feeding areas during their migrations.
Yeah, that's a beautiful area too. I mean, it is absolutely gorgeous there.
It is, and it again is a mixture of upland hardwoods and open fields, but then we have some manipulated wetlands on there that we manage through a series of levees and water control structures so that we can flood it seasonally so that ducks can rest and feed in there.
Are you actually planting those areas too for waterfowl?
We do. We allow some of those fields to come up in moist soil native plants every year, but then portions of them adjacent to the flooded areas or areas that will flood, we'll plant with grain crops like milo, millet, corn, different things like that.
All right. Wow, a lot going on just there.
Yeah.
So we haven't touched on South Cherokee yet, and I know that includes a lot of partnerships as well.
Yes, the South Cherokee Wildlife Management Area is obviously we work very closely with the U.S. Forest Service, and as I mentioned before, we primarily help with the setting of the hunting regulations on South Cherokee. Obviously, the Forest Service has folks that are involved with recreation, camping, outdoor use, hiking, things like that, timber harvest regulations, prescribed burning, and we aren't as heavily involved with those programs as we are the hunting and wildlife management aspect of it. But we do work closely with them and help with prescribed burns to, improve wildlife habitat, and are kept in the loop on other things that may affect our hunting seasons or things like that. Yeah.
What is South Cherokee known for?
Well, South Cherokee traditionally has been a very popular bear and hog hunting area, as well as white-tailed deer, but the white-tailed deer harvest has never really been, well, in recent years, isn't really that great. There aren't as many deer in the older forest grown, not as many open areas.
And that's simply because the forests have grown up. A lot of people don't realize that cuts off habitat for deer.
Exactly. In years past, in the early days of the Cherokee, and a lot of people will talk about the heyday, when the deer hunting was good, the forest was a lot younger then. There were a lot more open areas, a lot of clear cuts, a lot of recent timber harvest, which provided edge and early successional habitat that deer, rely on in parts of their life or parts of the year. And now that forest has, through management and through it being a national forest for a number of years now, has been allowed to grow and mature. And of that 300,000 acres, now only about 1% or 3,000 acres is open.
Wow.
So most of it is closed canopy, oak, hickory, mixed hardwood forest.
That's helpful in knowing that it's that 1%. The rest of it's not conducive for growing deer. That's not the point of that area.
Correct, but it has helped provide a lot of habitat for black bears and other wildlife that are forest obligates, that require those closed stands. But the bear population has continued to increase on the Cherokee and surround, all of eastern Tennessee, and that's probably our most popular hunting season or game animal that we have on the Cherokee. And we have 4 bear hunts every year, and they begin in late September, early October. We'll have one again toward the end of October, 1st of November. Then the traditional hunt is usually around the end of November to the first 2 weeks, 10 days of December.
Wow.
And now, more recently, we've started a later season hunt that's only about 4 days, which will be toward the end of the year, 1st of January.
And I do want to talk about bear more because you're an expert. You have a ton of knowledge there, but and don't be humble on me. I know the truth. But I want to go back. So I've heard the word daylighting, and I've heard about some of the work that you've done on South Cherokee. Can you talk a little bit about some of those projects that are currently going on?
We have entered into an agreement with the U.S. Forest Service called the Good Neighbor Agreement, where basically a sister or neighboring agency can work in partnership with the Forest Service to help accomplish their management goals, basically. And so through this plan and this partnership, we've worked cooperatively with, again, the fire and timber folks and the wildlife biologists with the Forest Service to accomplish these projects that they might not otherwise be able to do on their own. So we're helping them to accomplish their management goals and at the same time benefiting wildlife for our wildlife management area. One of the main things that we're doing through the current agreement is daylighting, like you mentioned. And I mentioned that there's only about 1% of the forest that's open areas or early successional habitat. So a lot of this work that we're doing with them now is focused on these linear or spot wildlife openings. Most of them are on either decommissioned or gated Forest Service roads that were used at one time for fire control or timber harvest or things like that. So these gated roads that have a linear opening through the woods into the forest interior, we can go in and cut those back either with long arm bush hogs or chainsaws, cut harvesting trees 25 to 50 feet on either side of the road and create a wider linear wildlife opening. And when we do that, typically on the roads and the old log landings that usually have wildlife food plots or wildlife openings on them, we'll go back in after we've selectively daylighted or cut back the timber or use the long arm to limb that road to widen it up. We can go back in there and plant those roads and basically have a linear food plot or wildlife opening that wildlife can utilize.
Do you see that improving the deer hunting on those properties? Is that?
I know that there has been, obviously it's been noticed, the areas that we've been working on. And I have heard of several harvests where people have hunted those particular areas this year, where we have gone in and planted those areas or daylighted them and opened them up. And so, and anytime we're in there, we've seen deer and turkeys shortly after we've done the work.
Wow. That's
so
great.
They're obviously finding those areas and using them.
Will those be maintained then as daylighted areas? I don't know if I'm using the correct terms there, but will those be maintained?
They will be, and we're continuing to work on miles of roads within the Forest Service to create and maintain those openings. And what we'll do once the project is initially completed, we'll go back on a yearly or every other year basis, and any encroachment that has come in, we'll go back in and use the bush hog or long arm to trim it back. And they may not be sown every year, but as long as we have that open area and the early successional habitat for feeding, nesting, escape cover, all sorts of things, then they'll be maintained and used by the wildlife that need that type of habitat.
Wow. National Wild Turkey Federation's involved in that?
The National Wild Turkey Federation has partnered with that. They have actually helped provide a couple of grants for work and equipment to help accomplish those goals. So yeah, they've come out and volunteered, helped clear some of the roads, some of the limbs as we've knocked the trees down, things like that.
That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Give me some ideas maybe I could do around my place.
Well, I keep going back to the three of them, and all the work that gets accomplished during that time. So we mentioned deer and turkey, the daylighting, and some of the management. Let's go back to that black bear side of it. I tend to think of black bear when I think of South Cherokee. And you mentioned the 4 hunts that go on each year. A lot of people don't know what a party dog hunt is. So could you talk a little bit about those hunts and talk about what a party dog hunt is and how that works with the agency?
And is that the main hunting that goes on here?
Sure. Well, black bear hunting on South Cherokee and in this region, in the Southern Appalachians, has traditionally been done with hounds. It's not like other parts of the country where they hunt over bait or where they still hunt and just sit up and wait on the bear to come in. They use trained hounds to track the bears, chase the bears, tree the bears, and that's how they hunt them. So while most of the hunting is done that way, we also have these quota hunts that are called party dog hunts, which in years past, during the time when the quota hunts, the party dog hunts were going on, those were the only hunts that were taking place during that time. Now they overlap with some of our regular bear hunts. Still, it's a quota hunt, and you have to have at least 50 members of a party to be able to apply to create a party. You have to create a party of at least 50 hunters. Then, once you have that party created and submit your permit application, then we have a drawing, a computer or handheld drawing, to see who gets drawn on which compartment. There's 4 compartments, 4 party compartment hunt areas, and each one of those has 4 hunts. So there's 16 hunts that they can be drawn for.
Okay.
So once they have that party and they go to the drawing, they prioritize their selections, which hunt they would like to have, and then if they're drawn, depending on which order they're drawn in, they get the hunt of their choice.
So the whole party goes on that hunt, or just individuals in that party?
It can be the whole party. It depends on, I guess, if they have something else going on, or if the weather's good, or different things like that. So there may be 50 people in one party, hunting in that area, and there may only be a few of them.
Okay.
So they don't all have to be there, but they can be.
I'm not sure I got 50 guys I'd want to go hunting.
I think that's a lot of the problem, and that's why it's difficult for some people to put in for these hunts, because they do have to round up 50 people that are interested.
And that's been more of, like you said, the history of this area.
Correct.
Talk a little bit about what the bear harvest has been like this year, and what's the importance of hunting bear in Tennessee?
Well, hunting bears is basically our primary management tool for population management. Like I said, with the increasing habitat, the older forests, the more lands that have been set aside in wildlife management areas or conservation easements, different things like that, there's more habitat that's out there for them to expand into. And so the numbers continue to grow, especially in those large tracts like we have on Cherokee or the national park adjacent to us, the Great Smokies. Those areas have always had a lot of bears, and so left unchecked, those populations would continue to grow and either die from disease or vehicle collisions or, some other factor from overpopulation. So we use hunting as a primary management tool to keep those numbers at a biological and social carrying capacity, so, levels that the animals can tolerate and that humans can tolerate as far as the number of bears that we have. And the harvest this year, we've had a really good year on the South Cherokee. We've killed, in Monroe and Polk County, there's been over 170 bears killed.
Wow.
About 160 of those were killed actually on South Cherokee in Monroe and Polk County. So each of those counties has half or more of the county is comprised of national forest land. So if they're bear hunting in that county, a lot of them are hunting on the forest. On Cherokee WMA.
That's going to help with our long-term management goals too.
Exactly.
Okay, that's great.
The timing of the hunts too, traditionally in years past when the population was still growing or when we wanted it to grow, the timing was later in the season when more of the females that were going to have cubs would be denned, or that segment of the population wasn't out there to be chased. Now we have more early hunts, early fall hunts, because now we're in a population control instead of population growth phase. And so now we can tolerate more of those females being in the harvest. And so we have some new opportunities with archery hunting during the deer season. They can harvest a bear during the archery hunt on South Cherokee, and those earlier dog hunts that we didn't used to have.
I often think about success stories, and this is definitely a success story, that we're able to harvest these bears without concern of their population declining, because we're seeing that expansion westward with our populations.
Right, and of course we are hesitant to give an exact population estimate, but the state, the TWRA, is working with neighboring states and universities on a larger southern Appalachian population density estimate. And so we're hoping that the results of that study will help further refine our population harvest strategies.
And then I'm watching our time. I definitely want to touch base because you have so much knowledge there, Brandon. I want to touch base on, we get messages from time to time. Here it's obviously colder out and people think bear are hibernating, but we get messages through Facebook and phone calls throughout the region saying, I saw a bear. They don't always hibernate.
Right, and in school, my old mammalogy professor, he told us that bears, black bears in our area, it's called estivation. They're not true hibernators like some small mammals or other animals. And in our area, they will go into a time of lethargy or winter torpor where their body does slow down, but it's mainly induced by a food shortage and not the cold weather, around here. So they'll be relatively inactive during this time, but they'll also get out, especially if it's not a female with cubs. Females with cubs will go into their den and stay until those cubs come out in the spring and they bring them out. But a male bear or a female without cubs on a sunny day like today, they may get out and try to forage or look around, and they may have a series of day beds or smaller ground dens that they'll move between during this time of year. So it's not uncommon for them to be out moving around. So
real quick, we want to remind people, what's the website they should go to learn more about bears and bear behavior and how to interact with bears?
Bearwise.org or our website at tnwildlife.org. There's all sorts of information about bear biology, nuisance behavior, what to do if you see a bear, report a bear sighting.
Yeah. Great.
So yeah.
Thanks. Thank you so much for being with us today, Brandon. We appreciate your time.
That was easy, right?
Right.
Brandon has got a lot of knowledge and a lot of information, stuff we didn't even get to cover today. So he's great. We thank you, Mimi. Thank you for helping me co-host. Thank you for setting this up. And it's been great to be here at the hatchery. And Brandon, thank you for joining us today. So
thanks.
Enjoyed it.
Tennessee WildCast. We're here every week, and we appreciate y'all tuning in. Thanks for listening on the radio, and we'll see y'all next time.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hey, it's all about Tennessee wildlife. It's what we do. Tennessee WildCast will be on the air again next week. We'll see you then.